So in thinking about how we can address these particular challenges, two clues from the research literature stand out. And the first clue is about alliance, the variable that impacts treatment the most. If you look at relationship variables in psychotherapy outcome research, they predict the lion's share of the variance in those treatment outcomes. And yet very few of us get much training or consultation about the therapeutic relationship, both in graduate school, certainly in continuing education workshops. So the therapeutic alliance is a very robust predictor of treatment outcome. Historically, the research has also showed us that our assessment of the relationship is often at odds with the client. Now, before I go on, let me just mention a little bit about what I mean when I talk about the therapeutic relationship. I'm using the classic definition by Borden, first articulated back in the 1970s. We like to use an analogy to a three-legged stool when talking about the alliance. Three foundational pieces, three legs in the alliance. And the first one is mutually and collaboratively determined goals. The more that the client believes that the goals, meaning, or purpose of the work has been jointly and collaboratively determined, the higher that client rates the alliance, the higher the client rates the alliance, the better the outcomes. Number two is mutually and collaboratively determined means or methods. The more that the client is part of the process of deciding not only what we're going to work on, but how we're going to approach it, the more engaged they are in the process and the better the outcomes are likely to be. That middle leg in the alliance, that middle leg in the stool, is the therapist role. In other words, what does the therapist have to be? How do they have to comport him or herself in order to be viewed by the client as warm, empathic, genuine, and respectful? The more that the therapist is taking feedback from the client and adjusting their clinical style to fit with their expectations, the greater the engagement and the greater the outcomes. Now, I said it was a stool, so on top of the three legs is a seat. That seat I like to call client preferences. The more that the treatment fits with the client's preferences, both in terms of how they want to be viewed by the therapist and instrumental preferences, when we meet, how we meet, where we meet, etc., the more comfortable the client is in the relationship. The more comfortable they are, the more engaged, the better the treatment outcomes. So again, these are the elements in the alliance. But as I mentioned just briefly before, quite often our experience as therapists of the relationship is at odds with our clients. I hope you're getting a hint of where I'm going with this, because if the alliance is such a significant contributor, and number two, if our view of the relationship can be at odds with our clients, then we probably need to be routinely asking for feedback, and doing so in a formal way, not when we decide and not how we decide, but rather on an ongoing basis, asking the clients for feedback about the relationship and then adjusting the relationship based on the feedback that we received.